One of the areas of sport that women are very underrepresented in is coaching. And that means that they depend a lot on many great men. And we're joined by two of them today in Graham Shaw and Mick Bohan. Graham was the lead coach for the Irish team that reached the World Cup final last year, the greatest occasion Irish hockey has ever had. And Mick has coached the Dublin women's team to the last three in a row All-Irelands, something that only two teams have ever done before. So we're really privileged to have them join 20 by 20 in KPMG today. Thanks so much for joining us, guys.
Delighted.
Thank you.
Female athletes are often, I suppose, undervalued because they're seen through this comparative prism of men, of their male equivalents. And it seems to me that the Irish women's hockey team and the Dublin ladies football team are no longer viewed through that prism. Would you agree, Mick?
Yeah, definitely. I think you earn your stripes, and certainly those two teams have done that. They've given a lot of enjoyment to people over a period of time, and they've been successful. And ultimately, regardless of gender, people gravitate towards success. So yeah, they've earned that.
And did you find that, Graham?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, obviously, it was unprecedented success to the Irish women brought back in 2018. But it wasn't always the case. I do remember playing in a Five Nation game against Japan. Up to 2-3 weeks before that World Cup, and we maybe had 6-7 people watching the game. So, yeah, the change has been absolutely huge, and as Mick says, it's well deserved. Considering the joy and that they brought to the Irish people over, and then obviously the Dublin people over in that period of time.
And one of the things, you both worked in men's sport and played men's sport. Do you see different standards when you're working with women's teams in terms of how they're, stuff that you wouldn't have to face as a coach if you were coaching their male equivalents?
Yeah, I'm proud to say it's definitely not as big a factor as it probably is in a lot of other sports. I haven't probably seen it from an international point of view really in the women's game. I have seen it when I've gone abroad. I do remember a time playing in a major competition in Malaysia in 2017. It was a qualification for the World Cup, and I remember sitting in the coaches' briefing meeting where they told us there was no video tower. And I remember bringing up nobody said a word, and I remember bringing up the question. There was no way I was letting it go. It was, if it was a male tournament being held here in Malaysia, what would be happening? Would we be providing an opportunity for video analysis, a video tower, so we can prepare and debrief the games as well as we possibly can? The answer was yes, and then thankfully when we woke up in the morning, we turned up there was a video tower installed at the ground for the tournament the next day. So it's just a matter of asking the question and pulling them up. I've also seen it, I suppose, many years. Probably, I suppose, the commitment towards maybe women's programs or women's teams in the club game. Maybe the coaches that are available, the money available to pay coaches wouldn't be on par with the male teams within the clubs. And a big probably one I've probably noticed the most in our sport is mixed gender clubs versus female only clubs, because the support of the female only clubs is completely on par with the male, what the male get in the mixed gender clubs, but what the female get in the mixed gender clubs is definitely not on par with the male team. So it's quite an interesting one to watch actually in the club environments. Is little things on getting the main pitch to train on, training times. We have in hockey, I suppose, water base versus sand base, and sometimes the female teams are being put on the sand base while the male teams get the water base pitches. So it's still there. It's still in our sport, but it's definitely not as noticeable.
It's a really interesting area, I suppose, that you've raised there, Graham, because I always say if there's inequality in how women's teams are treated, is that down to their gender or is it down to resources? And I often wonder, is that the question? Is it somebody, and who's making the decisions about those resources, Mick?
Yeah, I think it's a combination, Cliona. If you look, for example, at the moment, we're not using buses at the minute, obviously. So players are coming to and from training you know, their own cars, but equally for the challenge games that we've played over the last couple of weeks. Like, we've travelled to Kilkenny, we've travelled to Laois, we've travelled to Tipperary, and everyone drove, and obviously to protect themselves. But there's no travelling expenses. Like, and not that the squad are going looking for travelling expenses, but their equivalents, their male equivalents, are getting travelling expenses. Now, when you talk about bringing play teams to the next level or equality and whatever else, you can't talk about equality when those situations exist. And it's obviously, at the moment, it's probably highlighted because of the COVID and because there's obviously way more travelling involved. 3 years ago, I would have said this to you before, when we got involved, the team wasn't been fed. Like, can you credit senior men in their county team coming to training not getting fed? It just wouldn't take place. So all those things are factors that, you know, they are been addressed, and they change slowly. And it's we used the term right from the start of this. We never spoke about equality, but we did talk about fairness. And that's the word we use, is fairness. There has to be fairness. And those type of situations are not fair.
I think sponsors have a big part to play in maybe influencing, you know, coverage and awareness as well. And I noticed, Graham, you might tell us a story basically of how close to the World Cup you got before Softco came in as sponsors. And also, one of the co-founders of Softco is Susan Spence. So there was a woman involved there, wasn't there?
Yeah, very much so. They came in, pretty close to the World Cup. I do remember it was a bit of a rush to get their logos and so on supported.
It's about 6 or 7 weeks, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, on the escort and so on. But I mean, their support was just incredible. They went above and beyond to support that squad in many different ways, where, you know, they draped a full picture of the squad over their building. You know, I think it must have been 30 meters high. It was absolutely incredible. We held all our press conferences there, where we released the squad and so on. And they just, you know, from going years without a sponsor, and then Softco coming in was just incredible. They really did make you feel like you were part of something special, that they were going to do absolutely everything they possibly could to make sure that that no stone was unturned in our preparation and so on. And I think that's a classic example of Softco and getting behind a female team. And as Mick says, okay, I know the success needs to come, but just what it can do. And I think Softco will be the first to admit that they definitely got their money's worth out of that one, that's for sure.
I reckon it was the best sponsorship deal ever signed in Irish sport. They got brilliant. But they stayed with you afterwards, of course, and that's a factor as well. Similar, you have AIG. How influential are they for you, Mick? And do they help to change cultural change, I suppose, having that kind of a big brand with you?
Look, even the jersey, Cliona. Like, I mean, if you say go back to, I think back to 2017, when this group won their first All Ireland against Mayo, and the lads came in and took a box out together in Croke Park, and the whole footage during the course of the game was the Dublin senior team, who had just won their All Ireland up. And I remember people afterwards saying things like, do you think it took away from the girls' victory? And you're there thinking, no, what? It's the complete opposite. It rose the boat, because it's profile, because the fact that the lads were willing to do this as a group. So it's the same thing with the jersey and AIG. Like, when you're under that logo, it raises the profile. And obviously, as Graham has alluded to, finance is key. Like, I mean, it's not that you're going to do a whole heap more than anybody else, but you're doing what you should be doing. You're feeding them. You're making sure that transport systems are good, their gear is good. You're making sure their training conditions are good, that they've access to gyms, all the stuff that what would be deemed to be the basics. But without finance, you can't get the basics right.
Why is it that that women have to be brilliant before they get coverage or support? Is that still, you think that's still going to be there? You're obviously with very successful teams, and Graham, you're now down you're talking to us live from New Zealand. You're coaching the Black Sticks down there.
Yeah, I mean, yes, I mean, they definitely get a quite equal coverage down here, that's for sure, and they're under the same umbrella as Mick has mentioned there. From a sponsorship point of view, the both men and women's programs are both under the same sponsorship. But yeah, I just think it's a massive mindset shift that needs to happen across the board, and the more it's in the media, the more role models we present to young people, young girls, promote them. The next generation of female athletes could be quite frightening coming through. Actually, I don't even think we've scraped the surface. When we put them, when I think about when I was growing up as a young man, and the role models that I had and the people that I look up to, we can create a scenario like that for young females. As I said, I don't even think we've scraped the surface yet. I think if we put them out there where they can see it, the more they're going to want to be it. And I think if we can continue to push the media, journalism, TV, and so on, to put them in front of people's eyes, I think it's just going to inspire that next crop of female athletes. And as I said, it's pretty exciting to me.
We're getting record crowds now at things like the World Cup qualifier with Irish women's hockey this year, and make 56,000 at the All Ireland. But you're kind of annoyed now. Kind of, it irritates you sometimes, all of this concentration on record crowds for big events. Why?
Well, I know at the moment it's not going to have much of a bearing,
Yeah,
considering
unfortunately.
not have anybody in. But the bottom line is, in all of this, you go down and play an All Ireland semi-final in Thurles or whatever else, and you might have a couple of hundred people at it, and then the showpiece, obviously in Croke Park, and big promotion, family day, and it's fantastic that that's what's happening. They have turned the corner. But the emphasis should be on the whole season, not on one day. And that goes, like, I look to, just to give you an example, I don't think I actually said this to Graham before. When they got to their final, I was out in Bray, and we had organised to go, the group of us, in to watch it. And we went into it doesn't matter where it was in the place. And there was 5 television screens on, and none of them had the match on. And I turned to the guy behind the bar and I said, we came in to watch the hockey final. And he turned to me, he said, well, they were showing the soccer. And I said, but it's our country. And he went off for a couple of minutes, and he got the manager. So in fairness to them, they gave us a television in the back of the bar. And by the time the match had started, there must have been 60 people in that corner. Now, it's all that was somebody just making somebody aware that this game was on, right? Because once it was on, people were attracted to it because it's our country, and we have that innately in us, right? So it's all those factors, it's all those things, that a little bit more awareness, a little bit more push from each and every one of us, because they're obviously momentous occasions, and we all buy into that, right? So there's situations that just need to come from within. Imagine we started off our lives when we came into the world like that whether it was a boy or a girl, a man or a woman, that we had that expectation. We had that, just like what Graham was alluding to in New Zealand, that, there's a little bit more of a flow. It doesn't really make a difference about the gender, that it's just a little bit more of a flow because that's the way you've grown up. And wouldn't it be just so much more pleasant environment for all of us, because we all benefit more then? And the reality is, you probably watch twice as much sport because you have the opportunity to do so.
It's amazing. I mean, that what you're saying is this key thing, which is that men's teams are very often culturally embedded in us, whether it's through our families or through our lineage or through our county. We follow the Dubs, we follow the Irish team, we follow the All Blacks. Graham, I think that your hockey team now do you think that the Irish women's hockey team that you brought to that World Cup final and came home with silver medals, they're culturally embedded in Ireland? And when we say the Irish hockey team, everybody thinks of the women's team.
Yeah, I mean, they are, and that's the hard work and the effort they put on for many years, and particularly a lot of time when nobody was looking. But I cannot agree more with Mick's statement. It's I was only just talking talking to my wife about it, and in the 2020 campaign, while it's absolutely huge right now to promote women's sport and get more media coverage, more attendance, more participation, I think it's equally as important for the young boys coming through right now, that we educate them now at a young age that sport is played by male and females. Both genders compete, and both genders play with real quality, regardless of the sport. And I think it's, while as I said, it's important right now for to build a profile of women's sport. I think it's so important to change the way young boys and young men think from a young age, that actually this cultural shift now starts to happen and continues to happen over many, many years into the future. And I think it's probably something, to be fair, it's probably not a part of a generation when I grew up. I'm not going to speak for Mick, but I'm going to guess it was the same. But if we can start now and create a cultural shift in society, so I think while it's really important for young girls right now, it's equally important for young boys to see that and to see equal attention being put on female sports, because I think that ultimately down the road will lead to cultural and sports being embedded in history that we'll be able to relate to a little bit better.
Brilliant. So as I suppose as 20 by 20 is finishing up now, they're handing the baton back to society, and they're asking society to continue to ask hard questions that will make progress and continue this sort of progress for women in sport. So to finish up, I'm going to ask you both, what's the question that you want us in society to ask ourselves so that we continue progress for women in sport? Mick?
But the big thing is sustainability now. Like, I mean, when this whole concept started, and it was a fantastic idea, my immediate reaction to 2020 is, well, what about 2021? And that's really what it has to be now. And obviously, most unfortunate for Along Came a Spider, 2020 has been what it has. But it has created huge awareness, and the fact that it's had the backing of major sponsors, that adds meat to the whole thing. But now it's what's coming next. And my feeling on this is, to a large degree, if you want something to succeed, you have to flood it. You don't just drip feed it; you have to flood it. And I look like, I mean, Graham's talked about it there earlier with his own kids and stuff. I have 3 girls in the house, 3 girls and a boy, and I reared them to be accepted by society the same way as most parents have. But that includes sport. So when I look out the front, and whether they're playing soccer or Gaelic football or hockey, whatever they're going to be playing, right, I want them to give them the same opportunities. I want them to be treated the same. So for me, the big question now is, can we sustain this? And not a situation where we go back to what was. Can we sustain this and flood it for the future, so that in 15 years' time that we're looking at this, wherever about equality, that we're looking at fairness right across the board?
Great. And Graham, finally for you.
Yeah, very, very similar to Mick. And, while we're talking to 2 guys here have had a lot of success with female teams, it's what I'm looking for now is, are we covering the male and female events the same way? Are we giving it the same analysts? Are we creating the same stories? Are we analyzing it the same way? And to me, along with Mick, has said, if we can get that and provide the coverage and the analysts behind it, a little bit more understanding for young athletes when they're watching it, I think it would be hugely beneficial for the next generation of athletes. So, the challenges to the media and to journalism out there is, can we cover the female events just like we're covering the male events, and give it the attention it deserves?
And can I just add to that, Cliona?
Sure.
This is something that I genuinely believe this is actually really important as part of that. So over a lifetime of male sports, when male sports have been covered, the journalists, the analysis, they critique it. They critique the game, what should have been done, what shouldn't have been done. The tendency in the female game is they promote somebody who did really well. End of. That's not the way the game should be. They should do the exact same thing. If the standard was poor, it should be said it was poor. If they didn't convert chances they should be pulled for that. That is the way the game should be critiqued. And all of a sudden, then you're not talking about male or female, you're talking about a game. And in my experience of the girls that I've dealt with, that's what they would want.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. Irrespective of gender, elite athletes want to be critiqued. They want people to analyze properly, and that doesn't matter where they're coming from. Thank you so much for your contributions, your insight, your expertise. We really appreciate it, and continued success to you both.
Thank you very much, and good to talk to you, Graham, the other side of the world. Thanks, Lena. Bye.
Thanks, Cliona. Thanks, Mick. Take care of yourselves.
Bye. Bye-bye.